Wholeness and Balance Vibrations family, it's another amazing time to connect. So today I'm coming in here, I'm looking to do a tutorial as fast as possible because if you're a parent and you're looking at this, I know time is of the essence. So what this is about is that I got a question not too long ago, about a week ago, on the Secret Energy podcast from a parent in relation to teaching children about metaphysics and spirituality and some techniques that would work to do that. And at that moment, I didn't have anything to exactly bring forth because I would just have to bring in tools. I would have to kind of do an intensive. And so I challenged myself over the next week. I guess it's been about a week or two. I challenged myself to come up with something that was a bit more compressed and something that everyone could do. And the first thing that came to mind is obviously that when it comes to educating children, especially since we're living in this time where there's so much entertainment that the child actually has access to. So sometimes the educational things could be boring. So I wanted to put something together that was like edutainment, something that was not only going to be enjoyable for them, but also something that was going to give them an insight into the world that we're living in. And what I wanted to address specifically is actually the consciousness and how the consciousness develops when it's aware that nature, and in this case, we're talking about the trees and objects that can be seen as inanimate by children because they are either moving slower or they can't see readily, like with animals, how they're actually living beings. And so today I'm going to actually address nature as far as the plant life, and I'm going to show how to teach children about what's in plant life and also to get them more connected and tuned in. So this is a meta spiritual experience that the child will have. Now, the first thing is that how this works is there's obviously something going on in the reality. We talk about it all the time, and it's in relation to how it's like our consciousness is basically what we talk about is like how the consciousness or the world that we're perceiving is kind of upside down and possibly inside out or inverted. And that in order to see the world as it truly is, it's almost like we would need to mirror our vision. And when doing that, we would be able to at least see the fabric of the reality that all things are actually using as a morphogenic field to phase in and out of the reality, whether you're aware or not aware of that technique. And so since we do have the technologies to actually invert and turn things back around again, I thought about how we could actually use that as a way of showing children what exactly is in this fabric of the reality. Also, there's another condition, and I'm going to turn on my screen capture here. And this condition is called periodolia. And whether, again, it's actually a condition of a negative condition in the consciousness, I don't think so, but it is something that definitely takes place. And it basically stands for how we try to make images or recognizable things out of stuff that we see. And so I'll read it from the definition. It's the perception of a recognizable image or a meaningful pattern where none exists or is intended, as the perception of a face in the surface features of the moon, etc. So it just means that we have an ability to, when we see things, to see deeper into it and to see if we can actually find something more familiar or something that we recognize in order for us to begin to define it. That's how we work naturally with our consciousness, and it's something that we can utilize in this meta-spiritual game. Now, what we'll be doing is we'll be using a few images, and we'll be taking these images through some programs very briefly that can actually be downloaded onto your iOS or Android device. And once you take pictures or your child takes pictures, which is what their activity will be to do, then you can actually utilize these pictures and take them through the program. So the first part is, of course, is that the child would actually take the picture of something in nature, and then you would bring the picture back into the device and allow the child to actually begin to go through the process of seeing if they can recognize or reveal what are the things that are hidden within inside of these images. Okay, so I'm going to show you how that works. First, let me show you the software. The software that I'll be using today is actually Flipper. It's for the iOS device. You can also find it for your iPad and also your iPhone. And then we have another software if you're using Android out there, and it's called Mirror Photo Editor, the Collage Maker and Selfie Camera. And this software, I've checked, it'll actually do the same thing. So depending upon what device you'll use, this is what you'll need to grab in order to do this. The two images that we'll actually be looking at today, let me pull those up here. will be these two images. And this image I took, let me get my screen right here. This image I took actually just in the house right when I was thinking of this. Let me close this window down back here. And this image, a friend of mine sent to me of a picture that her brother took outside of a plane as he was flying into this area. So these are the two pictures that we'll be working with today, just to show you how easy this is and how you can always get something. Now, again, it's the interaction process with the child that is most important here. Definitely letting them do it is the key, because they come into this discovery and it really assists them, like it really clicks for them, and it starts to allow them to respect what they're looking at. And again, it's a fun game for them to play even by themselves in order to begin to get more creative and understand more about some of the things that you see within the fabric of the reality. Because truth be told, many of the characters within video games and within some of the cartoons that we see actually come from utilizing this method. Many artists utilize this method to think up new characters and to draw up new characters in the game. So you may actually find parents get entertained by this too. Okay, so the next thing is that, of course, as I mentioned, that there's something kind of going on with the eyes, or not kind of, but there is a way that we see things that's not exactly the way things are. And that happens a lot because of our own perceptions. It happens a lot due to the level of activation and awareness that we're at. So we're going to look at a couple images here, and these images are going to explain to you just a little bit more about how we're seeing upside down and things that are a bit inverted, and how up is really down and left is really right, etc. And so how we're going to do that is I'm going to show you very briefly the superior brachium. And any of those following the podcast and the shows know about this, but I do want to get it all into this one presentation. So what you're actually looking at is the actual area that is the back of the brain, and you can identify, or even inside of the brain, and you can identify where things are based on the pineal gland. Everybody's pretty much familiar with the pineal gland that's here. And that's actually sitting in the forehead of what would appear to be an actual man, very similar to, let's say, a Christ or Messiah figure, on a cross, if you may, between two aspects or hemispheres of the body, and actually being suspended on that cross and dealing with a situation of the perception between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain. But because you can see that there's the pineal is actually in the center, it seems to hint that once you balance out these two poles, which are often seen as the two thieves that were on the side of in this particular myth, if you may. But those two thieves are the right and the left hemisphere of the brain, which actually steal most of the consciousness, if you may, of awareness of how things are connected. And in the pineal gland, once you actually activate that, then you come to the center of yourself. So this would be to activate the crystal, or the Christi, or the Christ-like consciousness within yourself. So that's what all that means. And I just wanted to let you see how, because this is actually sitting in the back of the brain, it's actually pointing in the opposite direction than we're actually seeing. And this is like more or less an ode or a riddle to how the reality is that we're actually walking in the direction away from ourselves. And all we have to do is go within and see that what we're looking for is right in front of our face, and then we'll be able to realize it, and we'll realize the power within ourselves. Also, if you notice that the eye actually has, and this is the internal fibers and structures of the eye, you'll actually see that it does have a hexagonal field in the base of the eye. And this has often been noted as what causes a bit of the confusion about what you're actually looking at here. And even TVs are actually using these kind of what they say is the middle layer of the figure 8 fibers. They use those kind of fibers in order to to project the cathode ray tube, etc. So this is just gives you a little insight about how we're really seeing things, literally some insight, and how things are not exactly as they appear. So let's now look at the software itself and see how it can be utilized to get your child onto awareness of exactly what is seen in nature. So here we go. So I have here my iPad, and I'm going to go ahead and open up Flipper. And I'm going to actually select one of the pictures that I selected first earlier, or that I showed earlier, and that's going to be this picture here, okay? And now how this app works and how all of them generally work is that you actually see how the picture is going to be mirrored. So if I slide here, you'll see that it can take it into 3, it can take it into 4, it can make it vertical, it can make it horizontal, etc. And you'll have to play with these to see, or your child will have to play with these to see where they can get out some of those images that allow them to say, hey mommy, hey daddy, look what's in here. Okay, so with this it's pretty easy because I actually started this and immediately, I like struck gold right away. So I hit this and I played around with this a little bit, and you can actually even slide this left and right like this. Okay, and I couldn't find anything right away, so I clicked on the next one, and then I did that same thing, just sliding it left or right. And the interesting thing is right away I was able to get an image, as you can see there, of what appears to be a life form. Okay, and this is perfect for children because not only are a lot of their cartoons actually looking like this right now, they can immediately associate with, wow, there was something that was inside of this bouquet of flowers that was in the house. And so let's just look at that here. So I'm going to go ahead and download that, and then I'm actually going to put it up here on the screen again because I already have it on my computer. So just give me a second. All right, and so this is what we end up with. And as you can see here, there is a little Pikachu or something like that type of thing. And again, this is for children. This allows them to immediately get excited about what's going on inside of nature. It gives them a real metaphysical insight that, hey, there is something going on that I may not necessarily be able to see, but it's there. And it will for sure increase their reverence to the awareness of what is going on around us and just how important nature is in our lives and just how much there is to still discover. So let me do one more here. I'm going to go back. And let me turn this on. And I'm going to grab that other image. And let's see here. Here it is. And I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to actually, I'm going to start rolling through this. And I'm going to move this out. Try to keep my mic pointed here. And with this one, I got lucky right away because I was able to immediately spot what appeared to be a very ancient mother being inside of this image. And you can see it there clear as day. Let me show the one that I blew up already. Here we go. And you will see it there. Let me turn that on. Boom. So again, whatever you want to attribute this to, or whatever you want to attribute this to be, some people are always skeptic, but this is an exercise for children to get them to see that there's life inside of nature, just like us, that there's something that is there and that does exist and lives, thinks, breathes, etc. And the reason why this is possible is also because we are using a field or fabric in reality that we all can morph through. And so many things can come through this space, and there are many living life forms here. And the more that we're aware of that, especially if we start early as children, then the more empowered we can actually be to continue to go forth. Now, I also wanted to admit, just in being responsible here, that sometimes you actually get images that don't seem to be so, let's say, I don't know what the term is that I'm going to use, because sometimes we happen to teach our children a lot about this duality and how things look evil and things look good. And obviously that starts to warp their perception of reality. So if you do spot something and it looks a bit strange, it's best not to go at the child like, oh, there is, something dark or evil there. Get that out of there, because you introduce those kind of concepts to your children. And that's what allows them to perceive that something that looks different than them is actually nefarious, evil, and looking to hurt them, which, to be really, really honest here, also because of the power of the human being, as long as we're not harboring fear and manifesting negative situation or distorted situations, then we are ultimately the controllers of what goes on in our reality. So we maintain the greatest strength. But here's an example. Let me see if I can download this here really briefly. Here's an example of an image that may have some stuff in it that you're like, okay, what is that exactly? Just so you can see how that would happen. And again, what I really find personally is that a lot of the cartoon characters and a lot of the things that we use inside of our movies, etc., actually come from images being done like this. At least I think so. So let me go ahead and pull that up really briefly here, and I'll put that on the screen. All right. Okay, so let's take a look here. So if you notice inside of this image in the center, and this was actually a moth, as you noticed. Okay, so this was a moth, and inside you actually see this kind of like a rabbit kind of being. And then there even seems to be some kind of alien gray kind of thing going on down there. And then up here, there seems to be, my daughter said it looked to her like a bear or a wolf. Okay. So this is going to happen from time to time, obviously, when you're mirroring images. So once again, you want to also use this as an opportunity to explain to your child that we all actually also have a positive and a negative, or a visible and a shadow, and that all of this works together in this space in order to harmonize who we are, and that we often learn through these contrasts. So that's it. I wanted to keep this as short as possible. There'll definitely be some more stuff that I have coming, and I just wanted to say to everyone, this is really about us finding solutions to the issues that we're experiencing, and also preventing issues by pioneering new ways for us all to go into a greater level of awakening through education and through edutainment. And the best way or the best place to start, obviously, would be with our children, because that's fixing things before it becomes a problem. Thank you so much, and I'll speak to everybody soon.